Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the primary arms SLX 3X MicroPrism. But before we get into the video, if you do want to help me out, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, as that is all free and does help me out quite a bit. Also, go ahead and comment "it was excellent until it broke" in the comments down below. Now, getting into full disclosure on the primary arms SLX 3X MicroPrism, I did pay my own money for this optic. However, I am a dealer for primary arms optics, so I did pay a reduced price for it. On top of that, they do send me optics to review for free, so just keep in mind that there is that sort of relationship there. I bought this optic a long time ago. I had it on back order for, I believe, 3 months back when they first came out, and then I've had it in hand for about another 3 months. On top of that, I filmed a video on it for Gun.Deals as well. So I've had a lot of time and ammunition with the optic, somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 rounds on the optic. I was out filming the intro this week, of course, got all the footage, all the B-roll, everything that I needed. Came here today and realized I didn't do the drop test. So went back out, filmed the drop test, broke the optic, and here we are. Now, the majority of this video will probably be talking about the failure, how it happened. Unfortunately, it had multiple things fail at the same time. Some of them are very difficult to distinguish because, again, they happened at the same time. So it's difficult to say if it was 1, 2, or 3, or a combination of all of those things that did the optic in. But we'll go ahead and start with the most obvious one. So for those of you who don't know, I usually do a double drop test on just about every optic, especially if the manufacturer claims that it is duty rated, very tough, that sort of thing. You see a lot of that sort of stuff in their marketing materials, and you see a lot of other YouTubers point out how tough and durable optics are. So again, we like to check those out. So the glass did, of course, break. I usually do a double drop test from shoulder height onto an AR500 steel target. Shoulder height seems like an appropriate distance to drop something if a optic or gun or what have you were to encounter a harsh impact. Worst case scenario is probably about shoulder height. AR500 steel targets, which is a more recent addition. I used to do it just on like dirt and rocks, which was, softer on optics. But AR500 steel plates are consistent, and it's a very, very harsh impact, giving you, again, probably the worst case scenario possible. Now, that's not to say that everything you put on your guns is going to take such a harsh impact. This is just a very simple anecdotal test of this optic on this gun in this specific set of circumstances and what happened to it, and perhaps analogous to another harsh impact that, again, your gun, your optic may encounter. Now, the second failure that is less obvious and could also be paired with the third failure is that the cantilever mount section, the section in between the low mount and the optic itself, bent. So I believe probably on the second drop, which is a very hard drop here, you get a lot of leverage right here in the little crease here. The Chinesium mount, I'm not sure if it's 6061, I'm sure it's not 7075, but whatever sort of material that they made out of it is fairly soft, and you can actually see the crush marks right here. I'll try and throw in a picture for you so you guys can see it. But the optic cantilever mount section actually bent during the drop test. Now, the third possible failure is that I wanted to give it the best chance possible, so I did the 5-round control group at 50 yards, pretty decent group with just crappy steel-cased ammunition out of a 7.62x39 AR. I went ahead, I took apart the mount after I noticed that the zero had shifted 4 feet down and to the left. I took apart the optic mount, made sure that it was all torqued down to spec. I went overboard on torquing it. I torqued the cantilever screws on both the cantilever section and on the base mount to 60 inch-pounds, which is much more than what they recommend. And I went to 75 inch-pounds on the 2 substantially sized cross bolts, which the mount design, just by looking at it, looks quite strong, but the cantilever section in the middle is going to be the weak point, and this is unfortunately how I like to run the optic. So we'll get into the other options in just a minute. But upon trying to re-zero the optic, that is where the filming ended, because I could no longer zero the optic. At about 50 yards, the highest I could get it was 2 feet low. Now, that could be due to the fact that the mount itself did bend. However, it bent down, so I would think that it would put the zero up. So it's possible that it's a combination of there, or just how they have the actual optical system set up within the optic, that something could have shifted internally on top of the bent mount, or it's just the bent mount. Again, it's kind of hard to say exactly what happened there because they happened at the same time. Now, the front pane of glass breaking, you might think is the largest issue, but it's actually very minor. There's only a very, very small silver line in the top 1/3 of the glass, and it's still perfectly usable. And if that had been the only thing to go wrong with it, I would still be a very happy camper. Those are very harsh impacts to take. And even if the glass breaks, if it's still usable, it's still usable. At this point in its current configuration, it's not usable though. The mount, the cantilever section is bent, and I could not zero it with this cantilever section. Now, The problem with that is they do have other mounting options. So you of course have your straight riser, which this is probably objectively the strongest one. So if I were to drop it with just the straight section in there, the mount would probably not bend whatsoever. So that would probably eliminate that issue. But then you have other issues in terms of ergonomics. They also have two other cantilever sections. Unfortunately, they're both thinner and longer, so they're going to be even weaker than the one that I have installed. Currently, I would not recommend running any of the cantilever mount sections if you're worried about such a harsh impact. If you don't care about that sort of thing, then just use whichever one is the most comfortable for you. Now, getting into the mounts themselves, I do like how versatile they are and how it comes with all of the different mounting options. So you have anything from a low mount to straight riser plus cantilever, and you can kind of mix and match, and you have a bunch of different combinations. So you can get it very tall, very far back, just very far back, or very low. Whatever you want, whatever gun you're putting it on, you can definitely get it to work. The problem that I have with the mount design itself is that it really is just kind of screws clamping onto each other. There is no recoil bosses in here, so it's just kind of friction. So like on a T1, T2 style mount, they would have a recoil boss in the center, and then it would clamp down around that, so you have a hard stop in the actual mount itself. These are just, screws on screws, kind of squeezing together basically and hoping that nothing shifts. Not my favorite design. I'm sure that it is fine. And again, I didn't have any issues other than the drop testing, but again, it's not necessarily the strongest, most secure mounting platform out there. Now, on top of that, again, both of the other cantilever sections are thinner and weaker than the one that failed on me. Now, while it is nice to have all of the options possible, none of them are particularly confidence-inspiring other than just the low mount or the straight riser. Now, the reason that I like to have one of the cantilever mounts on the Optic is that this is a bit of a short eye relief optic. You get about 2.7 inches, which is accurate, which is not as punishing as other prisms on the market, but it is still a fairly short eye relief. You have a good eye box, left, right, up and down is all pretty forgiving, especially for something that is this small. Again, up until the failure point of both the glass and the mount, I was very, very happy with the performance of this optic. Again, until it broke, it was excellent and a total recommend for me. You get a ton of performance in a very small, very lightweight, very feature-packed body. So I believe the price retail is about $330, which isn't too terribly expensive, and you can probably find it under $300 on sale. The eye box eye relief is surprisingly forgiving for, again, something that is this small. On top of that, you also get a very decent field of view of 38 feet. 38 feet is what I would consider to be very good on a 3X Prism. Somehow they managed to get a more forgiving eye relief, eye box, and field of view than their old 3X Prism, which is quite literally double the size and weight. On top of that, you have daylight, bright, illumination. I believe you have like 13 total settings. You have like 3 night vision settings, and then obviously the rest of them are daylight settings. And on max, daylight, bright, now this is the red version, the red Raptor 556 version, you get a very, very bright illumination, which does, for some people, help them pick it up even during daylight where you don't necessarily need it. It is still a feature that most people, myself included, like to see. It does have a single 2032 battery on the side, which gives you, I believe, 20,000 hours or like 9,000 hours of battery life. But that is also compounded with their auto on technology. I believe they call it AutoLive. So basically after a couple minutes, it will turn off, and then when it senses motion, it will turn back on. Right now I have it off, but on setting 13, it does again get fire bright. Now, other than our illumination dial on the optic body itself, we of course have very nice windage and elevation. They are exposed, though they are recessed within the body, and even during the drop test, those themselves did not shift, which was very nice. Now, they're in quarter MOA increments, which for me is perfectly fine. They are very easy to use, so if you just have like a shell casing or literally anything that can fit in there, you can adjust them quite easily. Quarter MOA, again, very nice. On the back, you have a rear diopter for adjusting the reticle to your eyes, and that's about it for the optic. Now, again, this is a very small, very lightweight package, coming in at around $300. And with the low mount, I believe the total package weight is just under 8 ounces, which is, again, very lightweight for a 3X Prism. That's very forgiving, very easy to use. Now, depending on what sort of mounts you combo with it, whether it's a straight riser plus cantilever, or just straight riser, whatever you do, you're probably pushing it up towards 8.5, 9 ounces, again, depending on how you combo your mounts together. Now, unfortunately, this is an optic that I really like using. It gives you a ton of performance and versatility for almost no size and weight penalties. One of my favorite setups with this specific optic was on my NSR Pro, which is a 14.7 lightweight upper receiver. That plus this optic, plus a lower receiver, comes in at under 6 pounds for a complete package that can do just about anything. I did take this optic out to 500 yards several times with just the BDC reticle, and it worked very well for my ammunition. Now, getting into the reticle a little bit, this is again going to be very similar to other ACSS reticles. You have your center chevron, which with a 50, 200 yard 0, then 300 is the bottom of the chevron. Then you have your BDCs for 4, 5, and 6. You have auto ranging within the reticle itself. You also have 5 and 10 mile an hour wind holds. You have a 2/3 horseshoe on the outside for quick acquisition. Inside of 15 yards, basically push that onto the target and pull the trigger, and you're going to get a hit. So again, outside of the glass breaking, the mount failing, and possibly some sort of internal issue as well, I literally have nothing to complain about. You get a very versatile package. It's very easy to use. It has good eye relief and eye box for such a small, lightweight prism. It has a good field of view. It has a very usable reticle. Again, this is an optic that I enjoyed using in just about any scenario. I was very comfortable inside of 75 yards with it, and I was very comfortable out to 500 yards with it. Again, with an optic that is around $300, under 8 ounces or right at 8 ounces, and in such a small package that you could put it on any gun and you would not be limiting yourself whatsoever in terms of size and weight constraints. Overall, I really like the optic. I think it's excellent, except for, of course, the failures that we've mentioned. Now, personally, when an optic fails during a review in any way, shape, or form, it's not really my problem. And what I mean by that is I'm very disconnected when an optic fails, because it's just part of the review process, right? So it's not really my problem when something breaks or goes wrong. It's just my job to report it as honestly as possible and give you guys all of the details and context that I can. So really, it did fail, and it failed in several ways at the same time, which is a problem. However, there are a lot of upsides to the optic, and because of that, this isn't necessarily an optic design that I want to see go away. This is something that I want to see improved upon. So one of the major things that I think would be the easiest to improve upon is perhaps just a simple redesign of the mount, maybe adding a little bit more material. You're going to sacrifice a little bit in weight, or going to a higher strength to weight material in general, like 70-75. Probably going to add a little bit of cost, but for me personally would also add a little bit of peace of mind. So I think the mount solution should be one of the easier things to fix on the optic. Now, the glass breaking on the optic, glass is a finicky material. Again, it's something that it can be very strong in a certain set of circumstances. You can change up one of the variables slightly and drop it in a slightly different way, and now it's super weak. Glass is a very difficult material to work with, and again, the glass failure itself is very minor. Even if the glass was the only thing that failed, it would still be 100% usable, because again, there is just a very small, thin line in the top 1/3 of the glass. So again, it is still perfectly usable. The main downsides that I have with it were, of course, the complete loss of zero. It is no longer zeroable with this mount combination, and possibly due to the internals, but again, I can't separate those issues because they both happened at the same time. Now, even if I did throw on the straight section and manage to re-zero the optic, it still wouldn't eliminate the possibility that some of the shift was due to internal shift, not just the mount collapsing and crushing a little bit here in the back. So at this point, I can't say whether it was just the mount or it was the mount plus a little bit of internal shift. Again, can't really say at this point, and if I did go out there, re-zero it with the straight section, drop it again, I would probably shatter out the front lens. So at this point, it's very difficult to say whether it was 2 or 3 failures, or again, a combination of all of those things. Now, another problem that I have with the non-cantilever riser is that it does shorten up your effective eye relief by about an inch or so, which means that it's a little bit less usable. You either have to shorten your stock up a little bit or crane your head forward, versus the cantilever section, which does throw it back a little bit, which I prefer. It does be like that sometimes. But what we have at the end of the day, guys, is a very efficient optic in terms of how much performance it's able to give you, how usable it is in such a small, lightweight, and cost-effective package. Again, outside of the failure points, there's very little to complain about for the size, weight, performance, excellent feature set, all that sort of fun stuff. It just has some durability question marks. So can I recommend it for anything outside of hard use applications? You know, absolutely. I think it performs very well in a very wide variety of circumstances because it is so size and weight efficient. But if you're planning on putting this in some sort of hard use, end of the world type scenario, then for me personally, there would be some question marks around its long-term durability in a very harsh use scenario. But with all that out of the way, guys, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching this far into the video. Let me know what you guys think of the Primary Arms SLX 3X MicroPrism in the comments down below, or any other sort of prism that I should be checking out. Now, with all that out of the way, guys, thank you once again for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace out.